Oh,
Hello,
sorry.
hello, hello. Welcome back to Who's Views Merchandise Paradise. It's me, JT, here. And as you can see, I am not alone because I am spending some real time
Oh dear.
with the one and only Mr. Keith Barnfather. Hello. Woo!
Sorry.
Did you like that?
I was just digging the music, man.
Yeah, well, I thought that might be a bit your style, actually.
Thank you.
How are you?
Yeah, that's me.
Yeah, everything all right with you, yeah?
Yeah. I mean, there's always, as everyone knows, as you all know out there, there's always problems in life. But no, I can't complain at all. We're getting through everything, and there's always interesting things happening.
Well, certainly, and especially this year, because you are another one who is very, very busy here in 2023 because you've been traveling around, publicizing obviously with real time. You've been to conventions across the. I mean, goodness me, there's a lot for you to be doing. I mean, look at this one, everybody. Oh, there it is. Look at that.
Look at that for half a second. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, that was great. Yeah, that was LI Who last week. Yeah. I only got back on Monday.
Yeah.
Had a wonderful time there. First time I've been to LI Who, and I highly recommend it to any American or fans worldwide. It's a great convention, very, very friendly. Ken Deep runs a good ship there.
Yeah, and you enjoyed it. You enjoyed yourself, obviously, there. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I know people do cosplay all day, so you're standing there at your table selling. I was interviewing as well, and people just come past in their cosies, and I really. Although I know that particular Cyberman wasn't exactly accurate, I do think that it was a wonderful piece of cosplay.
It's still really lovely. I mean, it's more than what I could do, Keith.
Yeah. It just looks like I'm doing something naughty with my left hand, but we won't go there.
We won't go there now. So listen, anyway, you are having a busy year, but let's go back to how this. I mean, 39 years ago, which is a huge achievement.
Yeah.
How did this all come about? Where did you start?
Well, the brief story of the long story I often tell. I worked at Channel. I was always a Doctor Who fan. I worked at the BBC and worked at Channel 4. And when I've been working at Channel 4 for a few years, I went sideways and promoted to business development department, which was their BBC Enterprises.
Yeah,
I worked there for a year. And at the end of it, the opportunity came to leave the company and start doing work outside in sales and marketing. And I took the opportunity to then take the leap into doing production work, which is what I'd always wanted to do. So at the same time as forming Realtime in '84, I was doing other work, helping to fund the way through to actually earning a living from Realtime, which luckily enough, about a year after I left Channel 4, it did with my first big corporate client.
And you were, as you say there, you started the company by doing some fantastic corporate videos, whether they be the training or the publicity for the big businesses and what have you. And that's how you really established the business and made your name. But you were always a fan at heart, weren't you? What's this?
Who told you?
Yes.
Well, that was obviously before. God, I was so young. Well, we were all young. I mean, one of the wonderful things about that is, there's a sad thing and there's a happy thing, isn't it? That everybody there virtually who is in that photograph, and I can't list them all, those that are still with us, we're all still friends and we're all still in touch. And I think that's the wonderful thing about Doctor Who fandom. You make lifelong friends. I mean, Jan, Vincent Rudsky, Kevin Davis, Jeremy, Sue, and sadly Stuart Glazebrook's there, who passed away not long ago. Mark, who's now Mark Montoya Castro. They're lifelong friends. I've known them for 40, 42, 43 years now.
Yeah.
5 years. Crazy.
Try not to think too much about that one.
Yeah. No, 5 years. Yeah. That was the first Doctor Who convention, the one that we organised. I mean, obviously, I was the convention organiser, but I would never have been able to have done it without everybody on that stage, who all were giving their time, to make it happen. But that was the first Doctor Who convention in 1976, and I met Jan in 77, and I met Jan in 1976, and Steve, and Paul, and Jeremy.
And from there, it's all blossomed. When was it, Keith, you with Real Time? You're doing really well when it came to the corporate materials and the videos that were, I think, huge back in the day as well, weren't they? The corporates really jumping on this and doing some really glossy productions, which you actually, you did an awful lot of those. So was it always in the back of your mind that you could do something with Doctor Who?
Yes, I mean, I will be honest and say that when I left to form Real Time, one of the main objects of it was to do Doctor Who related material at the time. I mean, I obviously couldn't earn a living from it. I never really have earned a living from it. There have been times that the turnover from the Doctor Who material has kept me going when things were a bit rough, but it's never been a profitable line on its own. So the corporate work, the business work, was the thing that paid for most of the Doctor Who stuff to be done. Once it was done, it would bring the money in, and then it was an ongoing rolling platform. The first thing we did was the first two Mythmakers shot back to back in 1984, and they were the first one. Michael Wisher's Mythmakers was released in 1985, and there it is on VHS.
Yes.
That's the original cover. That's the second cover. The original covers were, I'm afraid I don't have them in front of me, but were a lot simpler and the bigger boxes. This is the second generation of covers.
It is, yeah. But this was, I remember seeing this advertising Celestial Toy Room back in there. And this was mind-blowing stuff, because this really hadn't been done before. This was taking advantage of a market that had just really started to grab hold, and the VHS, the video market, and the VHS players were creeping up in houses across the country. So to actually see something which was an interview with a player that had been on the show was so exciting.
I was going to say, the perceptive question was coming then.
Well, no, I was just going to say, because of that, because it was so excited, did you get this feeling? Did you see the sales coming in automatically, or was it a slow growth, or did fans just go, wow, like I did, whoosh, I have to have that?
The big thing for me was, as you say, it was something new. I mean, one of the things I've sort of realized about me and the way I do things is I'm always looking to do something new. It's just my nature. I don't get restless, but when I've done one thing, and of course, I mean, 180 Mythmakers later, I'm obviously consistent as well. But I do like to do good things, new things as well. And no one was doing this kind of VAM, as they call it, whatever you want to call it, value-added material, bonus features. Nobody was doing this at the time. The BBC with Doctor Who were only releasing the VHSs with the interviews, with the programs at this time.
That's right.
And I felt it was a hole in the market. I really believe that there was a place for this, but we were doing something nobody had ever done before. Quite rightly. I mean, I rang up, found the man who did the filming for us on pneumatic cameras, for those that know about these things. And he said, because he always did corporate filming. I managed to get a friend of mine from Channel 4, Keith Harrison, who was a very good presenter, to present the first two. And Vincent Ruski, a lifelong friend, came and did the directing for me, because I was trying to concentrate, because I'd never done anything like this before on producing. Yeah. It was a shot in the dark, editing it. I had to hire a pneumatic edit suite in central London, which was £100 a day or something, and I could only afford 2 days, so I'm rushing to get the editing done. I then had to send it to no, I didn't actually. I bought machines and did the duplication at home.
You bought the machines?
Yeah, I bought the machines, had 2 or 3, and I was doing them at home off a pneumatic master and duplication, because I could never afford to go to bulk duplication companies at that time. So it was all the shots in the dark. I didn't know how it would do. The first one, I honestly don't remember how many we sold, but it did well enough. And of course, I'd shot John Leeson and Michael Wisher's Mythmakers back to back on the first day. So I think we did John Leeson in the morning and Michael Wisher in the afternoon. So we had the first 2 shots, and I was only aiming for 30 minutes at that time for the edits. So that made it easier as well. it wasn't until we got to John Pertwee's Mythmakers, number 15, that we went for a longer length and then stuck with that. You know, I didn't know. The first one sold well. The second one really kept the flow going. They were growing. You're building a market because people had never, as you say, people had never seen this before. You know?
No, and it was great for people that couldn't necessarily get. I mean, conventions weren't as plethora as they are today.
Prevalent.
Prevalent. Oh, yeah, that's it. I mean, yeah. I mean, you know, people, you know, youngsters especially won't really understand what we were growing up as, and these videos were, for many of us, the only time we would actually at that point get to hear the actors or whomever was involved with the production chatting, and they always came across so natural. And as you say there's been loads of them since. And you know what, Keith, good for you, because a lot of the people that have taken part with your projects are of course no longer with us. So these are acting as real, you know, documentaries on a lot of people that sadly a lot of fans aren't going to get to meet now.
Yeah, that's a bit of a roll call, isn't it, there, of those that.
And that's just a sample, of course, out of the over 150 you've done.
180 now.
Yeah, 180. I mean, I mean, talk about sustainability. It's been such a success.
Yeah,
you know, a real success, the Mythmakers range, and they've evolved as well. And you can sit down quite happily with a nice cup of tea, and you can watch this really good interview with all these brilliant people from our favorite show. It's just wonderful. But you did diversify as well, and I've got some examples here, who viewers, of some of the other ranges that Keith went to town on.
What are you going to surprise me with?
Yeah, I mean, look at these. I was a Doctor Who monster. I remember that one coming out very well on the old VHS because everybody wanted that one. That just seemed to be, all my friends wanted that one at the time. I'd forgotten until I was doing the research about talking to you about the cruises that used to go on.
Yeah, I only did the one. I mean, I think one of the things I've always wanted to do in my work, regardless of whether it was Doctor Who or whether it was, you know, my corporate business, television, whatever I've done, is I've always wanted to do something slightly different. I like to come in from a side angle and everything that I do, because there's no point me making exactly the same material as, say, now the BBC team, the restoration team, do with the Blu-rays. I mean, they do a fantastic job. I love getting them. I love watching them. But there's no point me trying to copy what they do, or not that I would expect them to even bother, but copy what I do. You know, they can't perhaps analyze things as much as I can in we can in one of our productions, in the same way, because they obviously have a limited space on their releases, whereas we can be indulgent to a degree on what we're trying to do. I mean, each Mythmakers isn't a piece about the actor and their role in Doctor Who. It's a piece about the actor and their career and their life and their role in Doctor Who. So we can give far more attention to the person rather than the role. And I personally always, that's always been my thing with Mythmakers. To all of the people out there who've actually seen them, you'll know that, you know, probably about 50% of each Mythmakers is about Doctor Who, and 50% is about the actor's life and their career, you know, or production.
And that's really appreciated as well from fans, because that's what we as fans want to. We know about the character usually, and it's nice to hear them talking about the character. But we also like to hear about all the other stuff they do, because as fans, we go and support them in whatever show they're doing or whatever TV show they've come on, or if they've been in a movie. I mean, that's what we do. So the Mythmakers range ties in nicely with that, and the interviews are always brilliant around that. I've got these pictures as well here, Who viewers. Look at these. These are some of the videos and DVDs that came out. Who on Earth is Tom Baker being? Now that one, that's one of my favorites. Tom in that is just so Tom. There's no other word to describe what Tom is like in that one. He's just so Tom, and it's wonderful.
Well, I mean, again, following on from what I said, I'm always looking at how to do things slightly differently. I mean, Return to Devil's End was, I think that came before. Yes, it did come before Who on Earth is Tom Baker, I think. We were trying for a long time to get that organized. And no one at that point had ever done a documentary about the filming of a Doctor Who story. Probably the filming of any TV series at the time. It was one of my favorite stories. John was, you know, one of my I mean, he was a good friend, and I'd wanted to get the guys back to Allborn because I knew they loved that story. For probably about 3 years, I was trying to get them there all at the same
Was it
time.
that long?
Yeah, probably. I mean,
Wow.
because, well, when you think you're trying to get the director, 4 actors all at the same spot at the same time, it's not easy when they've all got work and you can't offer them a fortune and you need them for a weekend or 3 days. Well, you know. But we got there in the end. Tom's who on earth is Tom Baker? I'd already Tom at that time had never done anything connected with Doctor Who. After he left the program, basically. So I'd already done John Pertwee's Mythmakers, and I thought, well, who, you know, how can I do other Doctors? And because my client at McDonnell Douglas Information Systems, Paul Haynes, was also a Doctor Who fan, and we are lifelong friends. We're still in touch now, so we've known each other 35 years. I said to him one day, I said, well, I think for this set of videos, we need a very distinctive voice. What do you think? He went, yes, good idea. I said, I think the only voice we could have is Tom Baker, don't you? He said, yes. And so that I went to his agent at the time, his voiceover agent, Jackie, who happened to be Jackie Lane. And I didn't realize that when I phoned the company called AdVoice. They're still around now. And I spoke to her and said, you know, I'm doing a corporate video. Didn't say anything else. We need a voiceover. We'd like to use Tom Baker. Did the deal. He came into the sound studio, did all the links, had a good time. We really enjoyed ourselves. He was very professional. Didn't make too many suggestions. And those that he did, some were utterly useless and some were brilliant. It was just like watching him do Doctor Who. You know, we did 2 sets of those and got on really well. So when we'd done that, I went back to Jackie, having found out she was Jackie Lane, and said, look, I've got to admit something, and told her who I was and what I'd do. And I said, I'd really love it if Tom would consider doing a Mythmakers. Explained it all to her. She went to Tom, and because he knew me, and maybe he needed the money, I don't know, but because he knew me and we got on really well, so he knew he was in a safe environment, he agreed.
Wow.
I think Jackie had a lot to do with that as well. And we shot the Mythmakers first. Then he enjoyed doing it so much. He and his wife, Sue Gerard, actually said to me, we've got an idea. We want to do something. What do you think? And I basically, I won't say I wrote him a blank check. I'd never do that. I basically said, well, you know, we can give you a day to do the main film. We can probably stretch it to 2, but basically a day. She wants to shoot it all around their home village. So I said, fine. She was a director. She worked for, I can't remember if it was TV South at the time, but she worked for one of the Kent-based, South-based television stations. So she knew exactly what she was doing. So, you know, I basically line produced for the day and we filmed it. And so that documentary is very much Tom and Sue. And that's why it's so unusual and so different.
And that's wow, because that's exactly, I said to you there, it's very Tom. I now know why. It's just, and it is a joy to watch to this day. I mean, every night you can put it back. If you haven't got it, Who Viewers, it's one I recommend. You can pop it on, and there he is in all his glory, just being Tom and enjoying the circumstances and enjoying life. And it's a joy to watch. It really is very good. But you've also branched off into other things. And come on, we have to about over the years. You've amassed a few awards, haven't you, Mister?
Well, not until lately. I mean, it was really weird. It was all during lockdown when we just finished Sill and The Devil's Seeds of Arador. It's funny. I've always liked short titles for our drama. So you've got, you know, Wartime, Downtime, Deimos Rising, 2 words. Okay, fair enough. You know, Mind Game Trilogy. And then, oh, very good. And then what comes along is Philip Martin, who writes a drama called Sill and the Devil Seeds of Arador. So I thought, we'll forget that concept now, you know, and White Witch of Devil's End, you know, they're all getting longer, you know. I've forgotten your question now.
But no, what was it? I mean, let's take a look at those again, because you mentioned them there. These were actually really important at the time, because these came along in what is now famously known as the wilderness years.
Which it
There was,
wasn't.
but they were a lifeline for Doctor Who fans, really, because these were original dramas presented to us with members of the cast, people that we were familiar with, and they kept an awful lot of fans going, didn't they, those years, because it was new content, really, and they've really produced a fandom of their own.
It's a niche market within a niche market, which is pretty rare. I certainly wouldn't. It's a lovely accolade. Thank you so much for saying it. But I wouldn't like to be pompous. There are those who might think I have, but I wouldn't like to appear pompous and overbearing and how important I was. I mean, I was what Bill Baggs was making some marvelous dramas at the time.
Bill was, yeah.
And you know, it cometh the man, cometh the moment to a degree. I mean, you know, there was a void. I mean, remember, we made Wartime before Doctor Who was cancelled. So
yes, that's true. Yeah.
You know, that we were. Sometimes people say, you know, Real Time was around during the wilderness years, as though we didn't do anything before and anything after, which is obviously patently untrue. I mean, the wilderness years, if you're going to call it, not you personally, but I know people label it as that, was just a time when BBC weren't making anything, but Real Time was doing what it had always done.
Yeah,
we didn't change what we were doing. I'd always wanted to do drama, and we did Wartime, and that came out. I was very pleased with that. We did Downtime, we did Mind Game Trilogy. Then
we've got a picture of that here. Look at this.
Ooh, well, that is from the first. I think the first. Yes, that's from Mind Game, and then we made Mind Game Trilogy about a year and a half later. And what I'm doing at the moment is, although I was very happy with the material we got in the studios, you know, to actually bring Sontaran and the Draconian together and have Sophie playing a person you might possibly recognize who isn't Ace. Together.
And they look fabulous as well, don't they? Even now, when you look at this picture, they look, oh wow.
Yeah, I think I was very happy with the material we shot, although we went through many hoops to get it done, especially Mind Game. I learned, again, you learn, hopefully you learn as your career progresses. I unfortunately or fortunately had to learn in anger. You know, I didn't get the chance to spend a lot of time trailing other people to learn my craft. I had to learn as I made mistakes. And I made a lot of mistakes, especially in Mind Game, to get it all done in time. But Mind Game Requiem, which is the production I'm working on to get finished for next year, that is basically re-editing Mind Game and Mind Game's trilogy together and making it into a series and adding new effects to make it a narrative that works. The problem for me with both of them is that they don't quite work, and the visual effects in Mind Game are terrible. It's nobody's fault. We just didn't have the money, and that irritates me too much. Whereas, funnily enough, Wartime, which doesn't have many visual effects, I'm absolutely happy with. It doesn't bother me. It's fine. You know, it is what it is. But Mind Game, the picture quality of the acting, studio stuff looks so nice. I've always wanted to balance that with better visual effects. I also feel that the structure of it all doesn't quite flow as well as it could. So the definitive version of that, and I never want to do director's cuts. I've always avoided that. I don't agree with it. I think it's just money making. You know, there have been a few occasions when I believe that is utterly true, like, shall we say, Blade Runner, you know, where we know the story behind that. And the first version that he came out with his vision of it, I think was justified for what it's worth. What I think doesn't really matter. But I've never wanted to do, you know, the director's cut of this, the director's cut of that. But I've always wanted to do this particular story the way I always envisaged it to be. So that'll be out next year, hopefully.
That's great. And please let us know here on the channel when it comes out, because obviously we'll have a talk about it. I want to talk about the one you mentioned there. Philip Martin comes to you and says, "I've got this lovely script," and congratulations.
Well, no, it wasn't. It was the other way around.
Oh, was it? You went to, you see, here it is. Here, The Sill and the Devil Seeds of Ardor.
Well, it looks like I know what I'm doing there, doesn't it?
I love this picture. This is why I'm showing it. I don't know. There's something about this picture, Keith, that looks really, really, really good. I said, I've got to show them. I've got to use this one because there you are with Nabil, who's reprising his role as Syl in a beautifully menacing way. I mean, the slug has not changed at all. So there we go. But congratulations, because it's been hugely successful.
Yeah, that was the one. Oh, that's why we got off subject. You were talking about the awards. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, so
I'm used to talking to you now. We'll go anywhere you like.
Full circle. We're now back where we were. Yeah. So, right. Well, I did. You know, we're doing the Doctors series of compilation DVDs, which actually finishes with the next final one. And to fill those DVDs up, I needed to record new interviews with some people from behind the scenes to make up the set of 6. We just didn't have enough Colin Baker specifically. Had a couple of Tom Bakers we needed to do, but really the ones that we were lacking in interviews were Colin Baker and Sylvester McCoy's eras. So we've been catching up on those. The Mythmakers Live that we did last year was to catch up with most of them. There's a few we did this year as well at Mythmakers Live too. So one of the people over that period of time that I thought I really need to fill up one of the sets, and I've always wanted to interview, was Nabil. And I managed to get in touch with him and told him, you know, all about Mythmakers, and he agreed to do it. And he was living in his little country retreat at the time. And he graciously, and I do mean that, allowed me to drive up to where they were, he and his wife Marcella, and spend a weekend with them. I stayed in a local hotel. Quite rightly, they didn't want me in their house.
Well, who would?
You were quiet, you know, the wife. Anyway, so I spent 2 days with them, had a wonderful time. Really, Nabil and I struck it off straight away. You know, we got on really, really well. And my respect for him as a person just leaped anyway, having talked to him about his life and everything. And afterwards, when I came back, I was just thinking, oh, I'd really like to work. Oh, no, I tell a lie. I was actually sitting with him in his kitchen, and he was saying, you know, how much he enjoyed playing Syl, how much he loved playing Syl. And I was just, you know, you do. My brain was just going, yeah, it would have been good. It's a shame.
Oh.
And I went, oh, hang on. Philip Martin owns the copyrights to Syl. And I thought, I'd already interviewed Philip for his Mythmakers. So I didn't say anything to, no, I said to Nabil, if, I said, this is a huge if, but if I could clear the rights and we could sort something out, would you in any way consider playing Syl again? And he said yes. He said under the right circumstances, you know, yeah. So I thought, okay.
Wow.
So when I got back, I contacted Philip and I said, look, what do you think? Would you be prepared to write a Syl story? And he jumped at it. But what he did was he didn't understand, and that's my fault, not his, what I was saying to him. So he issued me a draft script, which had the Doctor in it and concepts.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. And I had to go back to him and say, no, rewind. This is not about the Doctor. It can't be, because we don't own the rights to Doctor Who. It has to be about Syl. And he loved that. He thought, sorry, Syl is now the central character. My God, I can do something completely different with this. Yeah. And one of the things, you know, I respected and admired Philip a lot. And we really got on. We were banging ideas around it. Could we do this, Keith? I said, yeah, that'd be good. Should we? I said, why don't we? He was going for sort of prison cell kind of thing. And he came up with the trial idea. And I was saying, well, if we're going to make it claustrophobic, could we set it in space? And initially, we were going to have it on a space station. But then we both sort of morphed into the idea of making it on the moon and making it on a colony, because it fitted with Doctor Who narrative history. It actually worked that later there was going to be a moon base in stories dated later. So we thought, okay. So, and it all came from that, you know, and he wrote the script. You know, I saw lots of it as we went along, but it was entirely a Philip Martin script with loads of political comments within it. And I think with a wonderful set of dialogue. I mean, the awards that we won, we got them for everything, but we got them mainly because the script was good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
So we made it, and then lockdown happened fairly soon afterwards. And before lockdown, I'd started submitting. I thought this is the first thing I've done. I remember I didn't direct Downtime. This is the first drama I've done that I personally think is a whole is good. You know, I other things I've done I've just not like I love Wartime. I think it's brilliant, but I would never submit it to a film festival because
Okay.
I don't think it's of that quality that you can. Um, that film festivals then, when Wartime came out, weren't as sophisticated. Now you couldn't submit stuff online. Now you can.
True.
So I submitted, and I went a bit over the top. I mean, I submitted.
What, you?
Yeah, I know. Surprising, is it not? I submitted it to loads of festivals, still, you know, just thinking we might win 1 or 2 or 3 awards, and then I can at least put that out there and hopefully, you know, up the profile. But it just hit a button, you know, it hit a button with people. It does. One of the things I think that's lovely about Sil is that you don't need to be a Doctor Who fan to really appreciate it. And that comes through in the awards that we've won. You know, his portrayal of this alien slug, as you called it, just comes, such a good description, comes through the screen to anybody watching it. And the acting is heightened, of course, because it you know, I wanted to make it in some ways as a homage to 80s Doctor Who. So,
Yeah.
you know, I'd said this to Phil Newman, who was doing the sets as well. So it isn't the same as 80s Doctor Who, but it is like a bridge between 80s Doctor Who and to a degree Doctor Who today. It sits in the middle, and that's what I was trying to achieve, so that it didn't look too dated, but at the same time it gave people a sort of a nostalgic feel as they were watching it. And I think we achieved it, and I think obviously the awards tend to support that.
Uh-huh. I mean, it is a great film to watch, and again, if you haven't seen this,
Why not?
Exactly, why not? It is another recommendation because the performances from everybody, the direction is really good. I'm not just saying that because there's a certain person here, but it is. I mean, look at the cast there as well. You'll recognize some of the members of the cast. I mean, this was a great piece to put together here.
Yeah.
I imagine they all had a good time as well. Nabil is on top of his game, considering that he hasn't played Sil for such a long time.
Yeah.
But he manages to bring a freshness to it as well.
He's a great actor. He really is a good actor. He's a seriously good actor. I think it's sad that he hasn't had the roles that would have shown that. You know, I mean, if I was I never wanted to be you know, part of a big company. I never wanted to be. It sounds like I'm being critical. I'm not. I'm not even making comparisons. But I never wanted to be a Russell T Davies. I never wanted to be part of the system. You know, I right from the start, I wanted to be a one-man band where I would hire people as I needed them, but I wouldn't be responsible for them, because you know, that's a life that, you know, until you get to a certain level when everybody else worries about it and you just do your own thing. It's a job that, as a producer, it's wearing and worrying, and so many companies go out of business. I saw that when I was at Channel 4. So my feeling was I wanted to just run my own business, keep it small. And I've had opportunities when people have offered me, you know, big work working for other companies, and I've turned them down. And I've never regretted it, because I'm proud of what I've achieved, and I'm happy with what I've done in my life, you know. So you know, I would have loved, if I'd have been part of the system, to have pitched something with Nabil as a lead, something sort of like crime fantasy, with him as one of the leads.
Wow,
a scientist, or, you know, a paranormal. He would have slayed it, you know. But, you know, unfortunately, that was never something I could do. But we do have a sequel. Philip wrote a sequel before he passed. It's there, and it's in the pipe. You know, I've called Vote Sil, and it's a sequel, follows on from Sil and the Devil Seeds of Arador. It's a great script. But I need to finish Anomaly, another one of our productions that I actually put aside to do Devil Seeds. So I now
Wow.
need to get Anomaly done and then get, it's just that I have this bottleneck at the moment of work. And I'm struggling to just catch up with everything. Over the last few years, I've actually been passing out more work for filming and editing to other people who kindly have agreed to do it for the not massive fees that I can offer. And people like Roger Stevens and Rob Thrush, Phil Newman, of course, but I'd never do set design because he's a genius and I'm not. I brought these people in and they've all helped me keep going and keep the production level up that is difficult for me as I get older as well.
Yeah, well, it's brilliant, and thank you for sharing that. There's going to be a sequel. That was one of my questions. I'm going to be looking forward to that, and whenever it's ready, just whenever it's ready, Keith, because you are busy. And I don't know where you get the time from, because you did mention this range. This is another popular range. These are the Doctors ranges, where you've gone through the Doctors, as you can see there. You've put together the compilations about what's in the years, and then on the back of that, you've also done the behind the scenes series as well, which are equally popular. I mean, I have no idea where you're getting the time. And then on the back of that, you've got this series here. Spin-offs giving spin-offs. Have you not got a headache all the time? Come on.
Well, I mean, it's very difficult. You get to sorry, everybody, sad old man here. But you do get to a point when you look back and you think, Jesus, how the hell did I manage to do all of that?
Yeah.
180 myth makers. I mean, I'd like to hit 200 before I pop my clogs.
Oh, I'm sure you will. Come on.
Well, don't grab. But it is amazing. I mean, the Doctors came about because Ian Levine, who bless him, and Andrew Beach, Dominant Temporal Services, were both co-producers on Downtime. I couldn't afford to make Downtime. It's the most expensive Doctor Who spin-off, non-BBC.
Non-BBC, yeah.
Ever made. Probably will be the most expensive ever made. Never say never again, but probably will be in relative terms. Ian managed to find a distributor a few years ago to release Downtime on DVD. So once that had all been set up, the company who were actually doing the distribution, Kosh, their sales manager had been on my Facebook page and sort of done a bit of research on me. And he phoned me up one day and he said, "You've got all these other titles. Would you be interested in us releasing those?" Now, I'd been through all that in the 90s, doing VHS into the high street through EUK myself. And I really didn't think there would be much of a market. Now, Downtime did well enough for them that they felt they wanted to. So we just started releasing the rest of my dramas. And they were very happy with those. They did reasonably well. And they came back again and said, "We think if you do compilations of your Mythmakers tapes, they'll sell." And I was really dubious. I was almost arguing with them that it wouldn't. But I know. But their sales manager was, who became good mate. Although we've drifted since because you just got life gets in the way.
Yeah, life gets in the way. Yeah,
it does. But he said, "No, let's try it." And I mean, I know the title had been used before, but it was just obvious to call them the Doctors, and then group them in eras. And so we started off. The first one we released was the John Pertwee years because we had all of the assistants for that one. That did well enough that we just carried on. Every once in a while, as I've already explained, we didn't have somebody. Like I wanted to do an updated Janet Fielding interview, which we did for the Peter Davison years, and we filled in the interviews that we didn't have. We did them. They wanted to carry on. So the monsters, the ones you were showing, heroes and villains, all of the ones that came out following on. One of my favorites in that one is Heroes because we got to put Trevor Martin on the front of a DVD. And I love doing that. I know he was pleased. And we only interviewed him not that long before he passed away. Anyway, so when Kosh, the distributor, like all distributors now, are pulling out of DVD and Blu-ray. I mean, it is a market that's shrinking. 5 years ago, you went into your Asda or your Sainsbury's, there'd be of DVDs. Now, I don't there's virtually nothing except the latest release in one box, and that's it. So they decided to pull out the market, and with the last of the Doctors, the original set, they stopped. They returned all the stock to me, so I have that, and I'm selling it off. But I decided to try and finish the set. In the past, I'd wanted to do a history of Doctor Who by re-editing all of the Mythmakers rushes, but I came to the conclusion while the Doctors was coming out that I'd never do that, and because it's just too much work. So this is my history of Doctor Who. It's the part work history of Doctor Who from the people who actually worked on it, and I'm very proud of it. So I wanted to do all the behind the scenes people as well from those eras. So we started with, I think we started with John Pertwee again, and did the John Pertwee years part 1, and that did well enough. Now this is us releasing it, not Kosh selling directly to fans. And we still had Amazon at the time, when Amazon were allowing us to sell without asking ridiculous terms that we couldn't meet. And we managed to sell, 2 or 3 of them before Amazon. It just made it impossible for us to carry on. And now we're selling them direct. And, we've managed to get through to this last one, because there's not much now that I can justify doing bulk duplicated glass master DVD anymore. Nearly all our titles will now be on DVD-Rs as people order them as they go along. Maybe the odd drama like Mind Game Requiem will do a box set, and do a glass mastered copy, but I haven't decided that yet. I might even do them pre-order and see how it goes. But they finish with Sylvester next month, and obviously really delighted about that.
So just because we are recording, when does the Sylvester one come out?
Sylvester's behind the scenes, the Doctors, the Sylvester McCoy years behind the scenes, comes out in November. We'll be launching it at Ian Kubiak's Time Controller event, which obviously Sylvester is attending, because it's about I always get it wrong. It's Remembrance of the Daleks.
It's Remembrance, that's right, yeah. Which we reviewed on our channel a while ago. Huge to this day. We loved it. But as you can see on the scroll down here, if you want more information about this and to keep up to date with everything that Keith and Real Time are doing, and of course to put in those all important orders, it's timetraveltv.com.
That's us, yes. And everything is available there to buy as a DVD, download, or stream. The Doctors are not available as compilations to download and stream. You can only buy them as DVDs, but the individual titles of the Mythmakers are all available in that form.
Keith, we've got a regular Who viewer who you may be aware of. His name is Alexander Beta Werberg II. So hi Lex. And he was thrilled when I mentioned that you were going to come onto the show, and he's given me a couple of questions, and he's obviously a big fan of all the output that comes through here. And
he is one of our greatest supporters, and I'm always grateful. I mean, I'm grateful to everyone out there who's ever bought a Real Time title, because the money that comes into Real Time just goes back into productions. So, sorry, carry on.
No, it's fine. But there's a couple of questions here I'd like to ask. One of the things that he wants to know, and actually he's not the only one that wants to know this, but the AirZone solution.
Yes.
Will that be making a reappearance in anytime soon?
Well, you've got to bear in mind that all of the titles that I know there's a bit of confusion over this, because it was the 90s when I was releasing stuff on VHS. Bill and I had an agreement where I released stuff into the high street for him under license, and then paid him his cut of the profits. So I know I put a lot of things out on the Real Time label, but they were BBV Productions. Now, all of the Auton stories, all of the Probe stories, all of the Stranger stories, and AirZone are owned by BBV, as Shakedown is owned by Jason Hay-Ellery, i.e. Big Finish. I don't own the rights to any of those, and I have personally no plans to reissue any of them or go to the rights holders and ask them to reissue them on DVD, mainly because I'm concentrating on our own titles now, but also there really isn't a market to do it anymore. It isn't worth re-releasing anything now. on DVD or Blu-ray. You know, the BBC Blu-ray releases of the classic series, the box sets, are a phenomenon, and they are a rarity. You know, network going down has proven, unfortunately and very sadly, because
story. Yeah,
I admired and respected what they did immensely.
absolutely.
You know, they were like a big version of me in a way, although they were mainly into repackaging, obviously. And that's a job I would have enjoyed doing, funnily enough. But yeah, it proves unfortunately, it proves the case that, you know, that VHS is dead, DVD is dead. It will take time. The Blu-rays, you know, bless the BBC, there is enough turnover there. I know that, you know, that it looks like they'll be able to get through them, or they're working their socks off to do it. It's hard work, and, you know, I think we all need to understand that when you're doing this not as your utter full-time job, it's very difficult to keep churning them out and to be creative. So all I can say is be patient, because they're working as hard as they can. But that is a phenomenon. So to answer his question, or anybody else's question, those titles are not ours. We don't own the rights. You'd have to ask those people who own the rights about their titles.
Thanks for that, Keith. Lex, there you go. There's the answer to your question. You've actually answered a couple of other questions that you put to me for you in that as well. So that was all encapsulated there, Lex. So a very concise answer to the questions that you wanted. So thank you very much, Keith. I want to come now to one of my favorite series that you've produced. And it's these, because these take us back. These are the Doctor on Display ranges. You know, you've got Longleat, the original Blackpool exhibition, the second Blackpool exhibition, Llangollen, and the Museum of Classic Sci-Fi over there with Neil. How did this one come about? Where was the inspiration for this?
Okay. Oh dear, oh Lord. Okay, so when we all got caught in lockdown, oh, here we go.
Thank you. There's the T-shirt.
I love that. I took that to Elihu. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah.
It's
great. I love it.
I don't normally wear them, but it was a way of sort of marketing and saying, "Here I am."
Did it work?
Here I am. Yes, it did actually. It was a very successful weekend. Yeah. So during lockdown, I was sort of like, I'm sure all of us were doing this. You know, one of the things that kept us sane was to go online and look at what people were doing, and sketches and videos that fans were making. And I was just sitting in the flat when my wife and I were in Anastasia, my wife and I, and my son Harry were all in Cyprus during lockdown, which was a really good decision, because it didn't get as bad as it did here in Britain. It was bad, but it nowhere near got as bad. You know, it's borderline. But anyway. And I was just sitting there and sort of going online and looking at stuff. And I suddenly thought to myself, some of these sketches, some of these pieces, all these oddities that people are doing, they are so interesting. We should do something, a program, a video. And I mean this not to sound, again, I always worry sometimes I just sound like I'm arrogant. Maybe I am. But I thought we could give them something to focus on. If we said, if you could do us something, if you could make a bit of a sketch, or if you could do a story, or whatever you want to do, and send it in, we'll put it in a production. Because I thought, one, it'll make a good production, but two, it will give people, you know, when you're bored, when you've got, it'll give you a focus to, you know, as a group, for all of us. And I got a massive response.
Yeah.
I got hundreds of people who said, "Oh, I'd love to help. I'm doing this, I'm doing that, I've done this, I've done that." I can't name everybody, obviously, but they all sent them in as this, that, and the other formats. And, you know, I got them in different, some people edited everything, some people sent actual rushes that they'd shot, some people sent phone stuff, some people had used video camera. Everything.
Brilliant.
So I got all this material in, and two things happened. One, well, we had a great loss. Anastasia lost one of her closest friends to pancreatic cancer. It was a traumatic time for her, for me, for Harry, because we were close family friends.
Oh, sorry to hear that.
Yeah, they lived with us in Cyprus for the last few months before she passed. So it was awful, and that really affected me. Even to today, I'm not quite as on it as I was. You know, it does affect you, these things. I'm not looking for sympathy. I'm trying to state a fact. So the other thing was, I was looking for, how do I link all this material? And I heard about Neil's museum again, probably through all this looking at stuff online, some of his,
Probably, yeah.
and I thought, actually, you know, the ultimate fan's heaven is to have a museum underneath your house. So this fits perfectly. Well, maybe not. I think so. Okay.
I know he's ahead of the curve there, isn't he, Neil?
Funnily enough, no. So I got in touch with Neil, and one of the things that I found now, and this is lovely, and it's sort of, you know, and it does make me feel quite humble at times, is he knew all about me. So I didn't have to sell the idea to him. It was like, you want to come and, bless him, Neil and I are good mates now.
Yeah.
You want to come and film at my museum? You, Keith Barnfather? Yeah, and I'm going, yeah. And he's going, please come. You know? I know if you're watching. We arranged it all, and obviously, I will say obviously, because Sophie was my first choice to do the presentation, because she's such a fan's friend.
Yes, she is.
I know all the talent from Doctor Who are, but Sophie is an exception, you know, in that she really cares, and she will always spend time talking to fans, and she's incredibly popular. So to present this, also she's incredibly professional, which was the other reason, of course. So I arranged with Neil. We went up and we shot it all. I spent a wonderful weekend up with him. Yeah, there's me interviewing him for it. And had a great time. And as I said, because I wasn't really in the mind frame to edit, I then asked Roger Stevens, who's a really good friend, again, known him forever, if he'd mind editing Lockdown, which he did a fantastic job with. We submitted that to film festivals because I believe that was good enough, and that's won awards.
Yeah.
That led me to think about something I've been meaning to do for a long time, which is a series of documentaries about the exhibitions.
Hurrah!
Because obviously going and seeing Neil's exhibition just brought it back to the front of my mind.
Yeah.
And I also, Sophie and I adored being up there. We had such fun that we, yes, Harry, you can have them. That's right, my son's checking with you. Can you have the noodles? Yes, you can have the noodles, but not too loudly. Excuse us, everybody. Yeah, I'm online. I'm live. You have to go and do it on your own. Okay. Yeah. All right. So my son Harry.
Hi, Harry.
Bonjour. Oh, yeah.
Ooh.
I know, French, Greek.
How posh.
Sorry, cards. No. Sophie and I enjoyed ourselves so much when we were up there. You know, if anybody there who hasn't been to Allendale and been to see the museum and been to see Neil, go, because you will love it. Okay, so I thought, right, this will be my excuse, you know, to go back and spend the weekend there again. So I contacted Neil and said, look, would you be all right if we did a documentary about the museum specifically? And, you know, he was over the moon, because I thought we'll do this one first, because it exists now. And I asked Roger if he'd carry on, you know, after doing lockdown, would he do the series? Because I thought he's perfect to not really. Well, I'd say we sort of co-directed and he edited, but, you know, obviously he gets the credit. And we went up there for a lovely long weekend, did all the interviewing, did the program, and then that led on to working on the following documentaries. And I think we did Longleat next, then Llangollen, then Blackpool 1, and we'll have Blackpool 2 coming out at Hooverville next week.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, when you think about it, it's amazing this hadn't been done before, because the exhibitions have a history of their own.
Yes.
So when you started producing these, I sort of went, oh, of course. It's absolutely, it makes perfect sense. But for those of us that were there, I mean, they are magical, because they do document each of the exhibitions beautifully, and it brings back so many memories. I mean, this one is my favorite so far. The Blackpool, I'm going to say so far, it's probably going to be the one that is my favorite of the whole lot. Sorry, Neil, but it's because the memories when you watch this, the memories of the original Blackpool exhibition from what I term the golden age of Doctor Who just come flooding back, and the interviews you've got on there, because Who viewers, these things do have interviews on with various people who were there and who have the memories, and they're just brilliant. So that's my particular favorite. And you may be asking as well, why did I put all the covers to one side of the graphic there? Well, the reason being is
I don't know. Why did you?
Go on, then. Go on.
Why did you put all of the covers on that side?
Well, do you know, Keith, I'm actually very glad that you asked me about that. We're available for Panto, folks, because the reason being is there's another one coming. Now, this one, again, I'm really, really interested in. The USA tour, which I know you're working on right now. Yeah. This was the infamous tour that left Britain around about, 86? Yeah. And went over to... Now, I didn't realize until I saw your graphic that it was there for quite a while. It did a few years there. I remember the launch, that cover picture you've got there. It was in the press, of course. It was on John Craven's news round. It was a big thing. Colin, Nicola, and Janet there with JNT in the background saying goodbye to all these props as it went on its tour. I'm really interested to see what you're going to be presenting in this, because I never got to see it. It's one of the exhibitions I never got to see because, of course, it was over there. So I'm really looking forward to finding out what you found out and what you're presenting. But one of the heartbreaking things about it is this. Yeah. Look at this. I cannot believe it was just left to rot. But I didn't realize either that it was your bog standard trailer thing. I mean, there's windows in it and everything. I didn't see any of that back then. Where was this?
Yeah, they weren't there when it was in use. I don't know the full story yet, so there'll be a few errors here. But the trailer must have been brought over to the UK because it's an American size trailer. Yeah. And then it was customized in the UK. Andrew Skilleter did the artwork. It was hand painted, not decals, not prints stuck on. It was
what you would get today. Yeah.
It was actually hand painted by an artist who we've yet to interview, but we're going to. And then shipped back after being fitted out with the exhibit items, shipped out to America for the tour. And then it toured around America for a couple of years, going to sometimes going to a place where it just stood on its own in a park or in a lot somewhere. But a lot of the time in combination with the local PBS station where Doctor Who was being shown. Doctor Who at that time, to those that don't know, in America was being shown on PBS, Public Broadcasting Service, which was all very low funded local television stations, not one station, but loads of them. They had a federation, but they were individual stations around America. And the only way they could raise money, because they got a very small amount of money from the government in America, but was to do what they call pledge drives. So the tour truck, the tour lorry, whatever you want to call it, actually was designed, one, to promote the program in America, obviously also to give the fans something to focus on, but also to help with pledge drives. So a lot of the time, as well as stopping for days in places on its own, it would also go to PBS stations, be in their parking lot, have a little mini convention, promote the program sometimes on pledge drives days, or shoot some material that was then used for pledge drives days to raise money to show the program in America. So it had many functions, and that ran for 2 years. And then what happened was, when it finished, they shipped it back to the UK, stripped out all of the Doctor Who exhibits that were in it, and they were all used, went back to the store, or in the case of the TARDIS, went on to another exhibition somewhere. And the truck basically was sold because it was an empty shell. It was painted, but it was an empty shell. And then the people that bought it, and it was put in this particular circus, it's not circus, but it was a family who, the Morleys, who did circus kind of things, fairground stuff. They had it in their parking lot, their storage area, as a sort of workshop office. And I would assume that they put the windows in. Obviously.
I see.
And unfortunately, eventually, it was just sold for junk, for the wheels and for the wheelbase.
What a shame.
Yeah, about 2016, maybe, sometime around there. Yeah.
It is a shame because it's another piece of Doctor Who history, but it's. I mean, have you had a problem trying to find footage of it back from those days of the interior and all this sort of stuff, or is that all? Is it going to be there?
Well, here we go first, full circle again. That was why I was at LI Who. That came out of a conversation I had with a fan in America called Chris DeLuca, who was very involved, is very involved in finding out about the history of the tour USA tour.
Fantastic.
I said to him, I really would love to get an interview with you. And he was I said, do you know anybody who could interview you and send the stuff over? And he said, no, but I'm going to LI Who in August. Maybe somebody there is going to have some kit. And I just thought, well, if it's a convention, and I've always wanted to go to LI Who, but never had reason to. I tend to need reasons to go to conventions. I don't go to conventions to go to conventions. It's, I've been there, I've done that, and it's not me. I don't have time as well. So if I've got a good excuse, I love doing conventions, don't get me wrong, but I need a reason to go. Yeah. And so I thought, well, if Ken Deep runs it, I thought, well, maybe if Ken could let me come, I could, maybe if I can have a dealer's table, I can sell some stock to pay for the trip, and I could interview Chris, and maybe if there are any fans who remember.
Wow, yeah.
So that's how it all happened. And Ken was wonderful. Ken, if you're watching this, thank you so much. Arranged a dealer's table for me, and a room so that I could do interviews in the room.
Smashing.
And I had the camera with me in the dealer's room, the vendor room. And anybody who had memories of just walking through the tour bus came up, and I interviewed them there. And then I interviewed Chris and a couple of people who actually worked on the exhibition, because a lot of fans were asked to help the tour, getting the Cyberman costume.
Brilliant.
Yeah, and I've interviewed them. There's still loads more I need to do. And it's also led me to a long-term plan for the future, because it's reminded me that I've always wanted to do another documentary about how the whole pledge drive system works in America.
Okay.
So another documentary that will come on the back of this one, I don't know when, I hope, will be a documentary which will be called Doctor in Need, which will be about the whole pledge drive system in America during the 80s and 90s, to show Doctor Who, which is now pretty much dead. It just doesn't happen that way anymore.
Well, that's going to be interesting to a lot of us in Britain, especially because we don't really get that, do we? We don't understand that sort of stuff.
That and the tour bus are uniquely American. Something American fans can say, this is us. We
had this. Yeah.
Because I think a lot of American fans feel not like the poor cousin, but obviously everything connected with Doctor Who, for the most part, not all, but for the most part, happens in the UK. And for them, I think these are two things they can say, this is us. We have contributed this.
Yeah, there's a bit of history.
To the history of Doctor Who, to the legacy of Doctor Who. Yeah. And I think it's important to tell those stories.
Well, it certainly is. And as I say, this was something when this was announced, I just thought, oh my goodness, why hasn't this been done before? It's absolute common sense to do this. It's Doctor on Display, the history of the exhibitions and museums to the current day, and the USA tour. Well, Real Time will announce that when it's ready, and we will certainly be telling you all about it here on Merchandise Paradise. Don't forget to please subscribe to the channel so you know when we're going to be talking about it next. So all good stuff, all good stuff. Now, I don't want to do this to you, but I have to remind you that your business is 40 years old in 2024, a huge achievement. Anything on the horizon, anything you're going to be doing to celebrate 40 years?
Well, I'm in discussions, with friends and other organisers, just trying to think what we could do. It'd be nice to do something. I have a yen that, I've got so many wonderful fans who've supported us over the years, and I'm just trying to work out, could we do something like maybe an event with a dinner, and everybody pays for their meal, but we get some guests along, like they do at some of the big American conventions. They do it over here as well, where the actor comes along and shares the evening with you, and you pay for your meal. I just wondered if I could do, because I cannot afford to have 100 people in a room and pay for their meals. I just can't do it. I know everybody would understand that. So I'm just wondering whether we could have some kind of celebration and some bits and bobs going on stage. And I don't know. I haven't really thought about it yet. I am so busy. But yeah, we want to try and do something. And the release for next year will be Mind Game Requiem. And you know, I'm going to pull back a bit on Mythmakers for a while now, just take a bit of a breather, because obviously I've been on a treadmill with. I'm not going to stop, but I'm going to slow down, because I've been on a treadmill for about 5 years to get all of the ones done that we needed, and I just want to just go.
Breathe. Yeah, that's fair enough, though. That is fair enough. And on top of that, 40th anniversary coming up. You've got this coming soon as well, haven't you? This is the Day of the Daughters.
Yes, yes. I was actually at a Big Finish with the kind permission of Nick Briggs. I was at a Big Finish recording last week, doing filming to go into this. I can tell you no more. But the main interviews were done at Ian Kubiak's event. What was it? You might have to edit this one. I can't remember the name of the I went to.
I'm sure Ian will let you off. Don't worry about it.
It was the one at the locations for the first John Pertwee story and the first Tom Baker story, the house up.
You were there. We can prove you were there. Look.
I'm getting old, you see. Look at me, Frank.
Oh, you and me both, kid. I tell you.
Yeah, it'll come back once I finish the interview. But essentially, I went up for the event, and Nick and I interviewed Daisy and Sadie. Sadie being the daughter of Liz Sladen, Daisy being the daughter of Carrie John. And the idea, the interest for me was when I found out they were both going to be doing it. I was very curious. I've always been curious about what I'll say that the girls, not being patronizing to them, but the girls thought about taking over the roles of their mothers, and unfortunately both of them losing their mothers so young in life.
Yeah,
relatively, you know. They were brilliant. Both of them agreed, and so we have a documentary shot around the event where Nick talks to them, because of course he directs them with Big Finish, talks to them about what it was like growing up with two famous mothers, what it was like losing their mothers tragically relatively young, what it's like playing the same roles, recreating their mother's roles.
No.
And how close the two of them are because of their similar experiences. I'm very proud of it. Rob Thrush is editing it. He shot it and is editing it. But we wanted to get a few other bits and pieces shot, which we did, and that'll all be going together. And I can't give you a release date, but it'll probably be out sometime around the end of the year, I would think.
Well, for more information on that, of course, you know where to look. It's timetraveltv.com. Keeping abreast with all the information there.
We have if anybody wants to just keep up with whatever we are doing, we have a newsletter that you can subscribe to on the website, on the sales website. At the bottom, you can just subscribe to it. We don't send out any email addresses to other companies, but every 3 or 4 weeks or every month or whatever, we'll send out a newsletter saying this is coming out, this is what we're planning. If anybody, and then you can just put it in the junk if there's nothing of interest, but it keeps you informed if anyone wants to do that.
Absolutely. And what a great idea is keeping in touch with everybody there. You know where it is, timetraveltv.com. And of course, here on Whose Views on Merchandise Paradise, we will be keeping you abreast of when Keith tells us of any new information. We will be putting it into the shows and giving you descriptions and details where to get the actual products and the costs, etc., etc. So do subscribe to us here at Who Views as well. Keith, thank you so much for putting some time aside from your very busy schedule to come and talk to me here on Merchandise Paradise.
Off to see Jersey Boys this afternoon, so rather looking forward to that.
Well, I hope you enjoy it, because it is really a good one. I remember that very, very well. But again, thank you so much for joining. Thank you for watching us. Hope you've enjoyed this interview. Do give us a like. Please share this as well, wherever you want to. And also, as I say, please subscribe. And have a look at some of those fantastic ones, including my favorite. So thanks very much, Keith. We'll see you again very soon. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.
Cheers, mate. It's a pleasure.